Media fact-checker. Rising national security anxiety among Australians and perceived underpreparedness. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. The Australian National University's National Security College conducted surveys of over 20,000 Australians between November 2024 and February 2026, including 480 interviews, 300 meetings, 8 focus groups, and 100 public submissions. 68 to 70% of Australians surveyed in 2025 to 2026 believe Australia will be involved in a foreign military conflict within 5 years. 45% of Australians expect a foreign military attack on Australian soil within 5 years, according to surveys from July 2025 and February 2026. Nearly 85 to 89% of respondents consider climate change impacts, AI-enabled attacks, disinformation, foreign interference, economic crises, and supply disruptions as more likely than not to affect Australia in the next 5 years. Concerns about terrorism rose sharply from 55% in late 2024 to 72% in February 2026, following the Bondi terror attack on December 14, 2025. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian, Source 1, frames national security as starting at the front door with community safety and economic prosperity as top priorities, while ABC and Newscomau emphasize traditional threats like foreign military attacks and terrorism as the primary concerns. The Guardian, Source 1, reports that Canberra residents were the least worried about terrorism and foreign military attacks, contradicting the broader survey data which shows high national anxiety on these issues. Newscomau states the report is titled Australian National University's National Security College Community Consultations Report *, while ABC and The Guardian, Source 1, refer to it as *No Worries, or the ANU National Security College's broader research. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, news.com.au, and SBS News. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. First NFL regular season game in Australia at MCG between Rams and 49ers on September 11th. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. The first NFL regular season game in Australia will be played at the Melbourne Cricket Ground, MCG, on Friday, September 11, 2025, with kickoff at 10:35 a.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. The match will feature the Los Angeles Rams and the San Francisco 49ers. General public ticket sales for the game will begin on April 8, 2025, at 10 a.m. via Ticketmaster, with standing room tickets starting at $95 and general seating at $140. The NFL ANZ General Manager is Charlotte Orford. The game is expected to generate significant economic benefits for Victoria, including tourism and hospitality revenue. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1, ABC, incorrectly refers to the game as the first ever NRL regular season game instead of NFL. Article 1 states the game is on September 11th, but Article 2 initially mentions September 10th before correcting to September 11th in Article 3. Article 2 claims the game is the NFL opening round, which is misleading as it is not the first game of the season. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Daly Cherry-Evans returned to Manly-Warringah at Brookvale Oval for the Roosters in 2026 season opener. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Daly Cherry-Evans made his first appearance for the Roosters at Brookvale Oval after leaving Manly-Warringah in the off-season. Manly-Warringah lost to the Roosters 33-16 in their first game of the 2026 NRL season at Brookvale Oval. A storm with thunder, lightning, and flash flooding caused power cuts and heavy rain just before kickoff at Brookvale Oval. Cherry-Evans was booed by Manly fans during warm-ups, team introductions, and throughout the game. Cherry-Evans played 46 minutes in the match for the Roosters, with no missed tackles under heavy pressure from Manly. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 and 3 mention Cherry-Evans was booed throughout the game, but Article 2's live blog does not explicitly state this until later in the match. Article 1 and 3 state that Cherry-Evans played 46 minutes, but Article 2's live blog does not specify his exact playing time. Article 1 and 3 describe Cherry-Evans' performance as tidy and controlled, but Article 2's live blog does not provide a detailed analysis of his playstyle. This story was covered by ABC News. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Australian government underwrites fuel imports amid Middle East tensions and shortages. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Anthony Albanese announced new fuel security powers on Saturday, the 24th of March, 2024, to address soaring diesel and petrol prices and shortages in Australia. The government will use public funds via Export Finance Australia to underwrite the purchase of additional shiploads of fuel, fertiliser, and other essentials to boost supply. Shortages have been reported at hundreds of service stations, particularly in New South Wales and Queensland, with panic buying cited as a contributing factor. The government will introduce amendments to Australia's Export Finance and Insurance Corporation Act on Monday, the 25th of March, 2024, to grant new fuel security powers. Independent distributors, who supply much of regional Australia, have reported struggling to secure enough supply from major companies, leaving some service stations dry. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian does not mention the opposition's call for a fuel excise cut, while ABC explicitly reports Angus Taylor's repeated demand to halve the excise. The Guardian emphasises the government's focus on additional supplies and discretionary cargoes without mentioning budget implications, while ABC highlights Tony Wood's comment on budget costs. ABC includes a direct quote from Albanese dismissing panic buying as not toilet paper, while The Guardian does not repeat this exact phrasing. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Massive KitKat chocolate theft disrupts European Easter supply chains. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. A truck carrying 413,793 units of Nestlé's KitKat new chocolate range was stolen in Europe on the 26th of March, 2024 during transit between production and distribution locations. The stolen shipment weighed approximately 12 tons and was en route from a factory in central Italy to Poland, with planned distribution stops along the route. Nestlé confirmed the theft via statements to AFP and The Guardian, stating the vehicle and its contents remain unaccounted for. Investigations are ongoing in collaboration with local authorities and supply chain partners, with Nestlé warning stolen goods may enter unofficial sales channels. KitKat advised consumers to scan unique batch codes on bars to report stolen products to authorities if found. But not all outlets told the same story. Newscomau does not mention the stolen bars being part of the Formula One line, while The Guardian explicitly states this. The Guardian attributes the no injuries detail to a Nestlé spokesperson speaking to The Athletic, but Newscomau does not reference this source or detail. NEWSOMU's statement emphasizes Nestlé's catchphrase more prominently than The Guardian's version, which focuses additional attention on cargo theft trends. This story was covered by The Guardian and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Australia-EU Free Trade Agreement negotiations and farmer opposition. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. The Australia-EU Free Trade Agreement was announced on Tuesday after 8 years of negotiations between Ursula von der Leyen, EU, and Anthony Albanese, Australia. The deal includes tariff-free exports for Australian wine, with industry estimates of $14.5 million in annual savings for wine exporters. Australian beef exporters will gain access to 30,600 tonnes of beef and 25,000 tonnes of lamb to the EU under the agreement. ABC, 30,600 beef, Newscomau, 35,000 beef, 31,000 lamb. The agreement removes the passenger vehicle tariff, 5% tax, on EU-sourced vehicles and introduces a lower luxury car tax, LCT, rate for electric vehicles. The National Farmers Federation, NFF, President Hamish McIntyre criticised the deal, calling it the worst ever and warning of long-term disadvantages for red meat exporters. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC reports beef quotas at 30,600 tonnes, while Newscomer reports 35,000 tonnes. Both claim these are the agreed figures. ABC states lamb quotas are 25,000 tonnes, but Newscomer claims 31,000 tonnes. Both sources cite these as the new access levels. ABC describes the beef quotas as well short of 50,000 tonnes, Canada's access, and significantly less than other countries, while Newscomer omits direct comparisons to Canada or other nations. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Bill Cosby Civil Sexual Assault Trial Verdict and Damages Award. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Bill Cosby was found liable for drugging and sexually assaulting Donna Motzinger in 1972 by a California civil jury in 2024. Donna Motzinger was awarded $19.25 million in damages by the jury in the civil case against Cosby. Motzinger alleged Cosby drugged her with wine and pills, believed to be aspirin, in his limousine before she woke up raped in her home wearing only underwear. Cosby's attorney Jennifer Bonjean stated they would appeal the verdict and expressed disappointment. Cosby did not testify in the trial and has consistently denied all allegations of non-consensual sexual encounters. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian states the jury deliberated for 3 days, while ABC reports the jury deliberated for just over 1 day. The Guardian mentions punitive damages were set to be determined later on Monday, while ABC states the punitive damages phase began later in the week. The Guardian does not specify the breakdown of damages, $17.5 million past vs $1.75 million future, while ABC provides this exact split. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Drug-affected driver sues Commonwealth after hitting schoolboys, sentenced to 13 years jail. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Taylor Hazel, 32, was sentenced to 13 years and 2 months in prison with a non-parole period of 9 years for culpable driving causing grievous bodily harm to 2 schoolboys, 14 and 15 years old, outside St Edmunds College in March 2023. Hazel pleaded guilty to 2 counts of culpable driving causing grievous bodily harm, stealing a car, and unlawfully taking a child. The stolen car was a green Commodore taken from a Sutton childcare centre in New South Wales, with an 8-year-old girl inside who was later released. Hazel was under the influence of drugs and driving erratically before crashing outside St Christopher's Cathedral in Manuka. Bodycam footage shows Hazel telling police, "I hope I haven't hurt anyone, and I think I hit one of those kids." But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 states Hazel's civil case is expected to be heard in July, but Article 2 does not mention a specific month for the civil case. Article 1 reports Hazel's sentencing is happening tomorrow, implying recent timing, while Article 2 states the sentencing occurred almost exactly a year to the day after the incident. This story was covered by ABC News. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Sydney private school teacher charged with grooming and child abuse material offences. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Benjamin David Collinge, 29, was arrested on March 28, 2024, in Beecroft, NSW, for grooming a 14-year-old girl and accessing child abuse material. Collinge allegedly posed as a 17-year-old boy to contact the girl on social media, who was not known to him. The girl's parents reported the incident to NSW police on Wednesday, March 27, 2024, leading to Collinge's arrest the following morning. Collinge was charged with using a carriage service to groom someone under 16 and using a carriage service to access child abuse material. Police found child abuse material on Collinge's electronic devices during a search of his Beecroft home. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC states Collins was a casual teacher at Newington College, while SMH does not specify his employment status beyond teacher. SMH includes tuition fee details for Newington College, $27,819 to $48,141, which are not mentioned in ABC. ABC does not mention the girl's vulnerability as explicitly as SMH does in describing her, SMH, vulnerable 14-year-old girl. This story was covered by ABC News and Sydney Morning Herald. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Donald Trump criticizes Australia and NATO allies over Iran war support. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Donald Trump publicly criticized Australia for its response to US requests for military support in securing the Strait of Hormuz during the Iran conflict, calling it not great and expressing surprise at Australia's refusal to assist. Australia offered defensive support to the UAE, including a surveillance aircraft and missiles, as part of its response to US requests, as confirmed by Australian Defence Minister Richard Marles and Environment Minister Murray Watt. Trump accused NATO allies, including the UK, of offering military support only after the war was over, specifically mentioning UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer's offer of aircraft carriers as toys compared to US capabilities. Iran has blocked the Strait of Hormuz since the US and Israel launched strikes on February 28, 2024, impacting Middle East fuel exports. Trump claimed Iran was begging to negotiate a 15-point ceasefire proposal presented by the US, while Iranian officials described the proposal as one-sided and unfair and denied active negotiations. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC reports Trump claimed Iran offered 8 big boats of oil as a gesture of goodwill, but Iran has not confirmed this and The Guardian does not mention this claim. The Guardian states Trump described NATO countries as not there for us when the US needed support, while ABC does not explicitly state this broader criticism of NATO beyond the UK and Australia. ABC reports Trump's cabinet meeting focused on justifying the US war with Iran but spent little time on ending the conflict, though The Guardian does not detail this aspect of the meeting. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Arrests and investigation into the alleged kidnapping and murder of 85-year-old Chris Baghsarian in Sydney. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Chris Baghsarian, 85, was allegedly kidnapped from his North Ryde home on February 13 in a case of mistaken identity. His remains were found near a golf club in Pitt Town, northwest Sydney, on February 24, discovered after 10+ days. 2 men, Gerard Andrews, 29, and Daniel Stevens, 24, were charged with murder and kidnapping with intent to ransom on February 20. 2 additional arrests, a 23-year-old man and woman, were made on March 13 during a search warrant at Seven Hills. Police released CCTV footage showing 3 men near a Dural property, alleged stronghold, on the night of the abduction. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC states the intended target was a relative of Dimitri Stepanyan, but Newscomau does not mention this detail. Newscomau reports the man was arrested in nothing but his underwear, while ABC and Guardian do not specify his attire. Newscomau claims the blue vehicle was a Hyundai, but ABC only refers to it as a blue car without specifying the make. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. TGA proposes sunscreen regulation reforms amid SPF testing controversies. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. The Therapeutic Goods Administration, TGA, has proposed sweeping reforms to Australian sunscreen regulations, including changes to SPF testing requirements, lab oversight, and simplified SPF labeling, ABC, Newscomau. Consumer Group Choice tested 20 popular SPF 50 and SPF 50+ sunscreens in June 2023 and found 16 did not meet their advertised SPF claims, ABC, Newscomau. The TGA has opened a public consultation process on the proposed reforms, citing Australia's high rates of skin cancer and melanoma, around 2,000 deaths annually, as justification. ABC News. Banana Boat Baby Zinc Sunscreen Lotion SPF 50+ tested at SPF 28, while Kohl's SPF 50+ Sunscreen Ultra Tube tested at SPF 43. News. Ultraviolet's Australian Sunscreen Lean Screen 50+ tested at SPF 4, despite claiming SPF 50+. News. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC notes the TGA's proposed SPF rating reform would create divergence with other countries using numerical SPF ratings, while Newscomau does not mention this issue. Newscomau states Ultraviolet's Instagram post claimed testing costs up to $150,000, but ABC does not reference this specific detail. ABC reports the TGA has proposed options for reform, including maintaining current standards, while Newscomau frames the reforms as definitive changes without mentioning this option. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Australia's medal haul at the 2024 World Athletics Indoor Championships in Poland. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Jessica Hull won silver in the women's 1/500m at the World Athletics Indoor Championships in Poland. Jessica Hull also won bronze in the women's 3,000m 24 hours earlier at the same event. Hull set a new Australian and Oceanian indoor record of 3 minutes and 59.45 seconds in the 1/500m, improving from 4 minutes and 1.19 seconds. Georgia Hunter-Bell of Great Britain won gold in the women's 1/500m with a time of 3 minutes and 58.53 seconds, 2026 world best. Adam Spencer won bronze in the men's 1/500m with a time of 3 minutes and 40.26 seconds after starting in 5th place. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC mentions Keely Hodgkinson's 1 minute and 55.30 seconds time as the second fastest indoor time in history, but The Guardian does not reference this detail. ABC includes specific medal counts for Australia, 2 silver, 3 bronze, while The Guardian does not specify the exact breakdown. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. US President Trump criticizes Australia's Iran war support amid escalating Middle East conflict and diplomatic tensions. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Donald Trump publicly criticized Australia in a White House cabinet meeting, calling it not great for not assisting sufficiently in the war against Iran, stating "I was a little surprised by Australia, SMH, Thij, ABC." Prime Minister Anthony Albanese responded that Australia was not consulted before the US military action in Iran and denied Trump's claims, stating there is no request being made to Australia that has not been agreed to, SMH, Thij, ABC. Australia provided advanced medium-range air-to-air missiles to the United Arab Emirates at its request, which Deputy Prime Minister Richard Marles confirmed was the only US request Australia had fulfilled, SMH, Thij. Trump extended Iran's deadline to April 6, 2026, pausing energy infrastructure strikes for 10 days, claiming talks were going very well, SMH, ABC. Iran's Speaker Mohammad Baghar Ghalibaf congratulated pro-government protesters in Tehran, stating no one can issue an ultimatum to Iran and the Iranian people, SMH, Thij. But not all outlets told the same story. SMH and Thij both report Trump criticized Australia for not assisting in the Iran war, but ABC does not include this specific criticism in its headline or opening paragraphs. SMH and Thij state Trump mocked British aircraft carriers as toys, but ABC does not mention this detail. SMH and Thij report Trump extended Iran's deadline to April 6, 2026, but ABC only states Trump extended the deadline without specifying the exact date. This story was covered by ABC News, Sydney Morning Herald and The Age. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Japanese bulk carrier Iron Maiden escapes Strait of Hormuz blockade amid Middle East conflict. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. The Japanese-owned bulk carrier named Iron Maiden escaped through Iran's blockade of the Strait of Hormuz on March 4 to 5, 2024, becoming the first known vessel to do so during the conflict. Iron Maiden was docked in Dubai's Jebel Ali commercial port when the war began on February 28, 2024, and departed on March 2 before attempting the Strait of Hormuz passage. The ship broadcast China owner from its transponder while navigating the Strait of Hormuz, cutting its tracking signal during the crossing and resuming it after exiting. Iron Maiden stopped in Singapore on March 17 before heading to Western Australia's Kwinana port, where it is expected to arrive on March 28, 2024, with no cargo. At least 20 commercial vessels have been targeted in or around the Strait of Hormuz since the start of the war, according to shipping security monitors. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC reports the Iron Maiden is expected to arrive in Western Australia's Kwinana port on Thursday, March 28, while Newscomau states it is off Geraldton's coast overnight, no specific arrival date. ABC cites Brent Sadler, Heritage Foundation, arguing Iran may lack the hardware to maintain attacks on shipping, while ABC also notes other analysts dispute this, claiming Iran could still harass ships with drones and speedboats, no direct contradiction in Newscomau. ABC mentions 6 fuel tankers were cancelled or deferred for Australia in March, with some replacements, while Newscomau does not detail specific shipments or cancellations. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Iranians worldwide celebrate Nowruz amid war and regime repression. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Nowruz began on March 21, 2024, marking the spring equinox in the Northern Hemisphere. Nowruz is a 2,000 to 3,000-year-old festival observed in Iran, Afghanistan, Albania, Uzbekistan, Georgia, Kyrgyzstan, and diaspora communities worldwide. The Haft scene is a traditional Nowruz spread featuring 7 symbolic items starting with the letter S in Farsi, representing renewal. Iranian authorities restrict or discourage pre-Islamic traditions like Nowruz, with surveillance and threats of arrest reported. Nasreen Kaur, an Iranian Australian, moved to Aidlong, NSW, population less than 1,000, in 2019 and celebrates Nowruz with the regional Persian community. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 states Nasreen Kaur is in Aidlong, population less than 1,000, and travels to Sydney, Melbourne, while Article 2 does not mention her location or travel habits. Article 1 emphasizes the scale of Nowruz events in Wagga Wagga as the largest since 2017, but Article 2 does not reference regional Australian celebrations. Article 1 focuses on the emotional loneliness of celebrating Nowruz without family due to internet shutdowns, while Article 2 highlights defiance and resilience amid government suppression. This story was covered by ABC News. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Coroner's inquest into influencers' free birth death and birthkeepers' refusal to testify. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Stacey Warner-Key, 30, died from a postpartum hemorrhage and cardiac arrest after a free birth at home on September 29, 2025 in Seaford, Melbourne. Emily Lowell, known as the authentic birthkeeper, was present during Stacey Warner-Key's home birth and when 000 was called at 4:13 a.m. A coroner's inquest into Warner-Key's death is proposed for mid-June 2026, ABC, mid-June, Newscomau, June 15 to 19. Emily Lowell has refused to provide a statement citing privilege against self-incrimination, and counsel assisting the inquest has requested a witness summons. Victoria's Health Complaints Commissioner issued an interim ban on Emily Lowell from providing general health services in October 2025, pending investigation. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC states the inquest is proposed for mid-June without a specific date, while Newscomau specifies June 15 to 19, 2026. ABC reports the ban on Emily Lal's services is pending the outcome of an investigation without a deadline, while Newscomau states it remains in effect until April 7, 2026. Newscomau mentions a directions hearing held on Tuesday morning, unspecified date, which is not referenced in ABC. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Georgia Vols record-breaking T20I century versus West Indies and Australia's series sweep. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Georgia Volume 50 scored the third fastest T20 international century by an Australian woman in 52 balls against West Indies on the 26th of March, 2024, St Vincent. Vols' knock included 6 sixes and ended with a boundary off Deandra Dottin before she was bowled by Hayley Matthews. Australia won the T20I series against West Indies 3-0 via the DLS method after rain interrupted the final match. Hosts chased 101 from 10 overs, scoring 61-3. Sophie Molyneux scored 25 off 12 balls in her first series appearance as captain after returning from back pain. Nicola Carey scored an unbeaten 24 off 20 balls, contributing to Australia's batting depth. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC describes Vols' century as the third fastest of an Australian, implying only 3 are listed, while Guardian provides a full list of 5 Australian records, including Lanning's 53-ball century versus Ireland. ABC does not mention the match date time zone, Monday-Tuesday AEDT, while Guardian includes this detail. ABC does not list Meg Lanning's 53-ball century versus Ireland, 2014, or Beth Mooney's 54-ball record, which Guardian explicitly includes. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Boating accident in Tasmania's northwest coast kills 1, 3 rescued after 16-hour ordeal. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. 4 people, 3 adults, ages 27, 33, and 35, and a 6-year-old child were on a fishing trip departing Montague boat ramp near Robbins Island and Stony Point at 5:30 p.m. on Saturday the 26th of October, 2024. The boat capsized or broke up around 9 p.m. on Saturday, throwing all 4 into the water off Tasmania's northwest coast. 3 survivors, 27-year-old woman, 33-year-old man, and 6-year-old child, were found alive floating near Robbins Island or Big Stony Island and rescued about 1 p.m. on Sunday the 27th of October, 2024, after 16 hours in the water. A man's body was found on the eastern side of Robbins Island on Monday the 28th of October, 2024, identified as the 35-year-old missing person. The 3 rescued individuals were wearing life jackets and were taken to Northwest Regional Hospital for observation but suffered no injuries. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 states the rescued trio were found floating in the ocean, while Article 2 says they were washed ashore near Robbins Island. Article 2 claims the 35-year-old man was not wearing a life jacket at all, while Article 3 and Article 1 imply he was wearing one initially but removed it. Article 2 specifies the 35-year-old was a friend of the family, while Article 1 does not mention this relationship. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. ABC staff 24-hour strike over pay and conditions. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Over 2,000 ABC staff walked off the job for a 24-hour strike on Wednesday, the first in 2 decades. The strike began at 11 a.m. and affected TV, radio, and digital services across Australia. ABC TV switched to BBC World Service programming, including 7.30 with Sarah Ferguson and News Breakfast. Radio National, AM, PM, and Triple J played pre-recorded music or repeats without presenters. The Media, Entertainment and Arts Alliance, MEAA, and Community and Public Sector Union, CPSU, organized the strike. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 states over 2,000 staff walked out, while Article 2 specifies 1,200 MEAA members, of 4,500 total, and does not confirm the exact number striking. Article 2 claims Mark's 10% offer put staff ahead of inflation at 4.4%, but Article 3 does not mention this specific figure or sweeten a detail. Article 1 reports ABC Radio Melbourne and Sydney played Waiting for a Star to Fall at 11 a.m., while Article 3 only mentions it was played just before 11 a.m. without specifying location. This story was covered by The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. US-Iran escalation over Strait of Hormuz and threats to regional infrastructure. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Donald Trump issued a 48-hour ultimatum to Iran on March 21, 2026, demanding full reopening of the Strait of Hormuz without threat or the US would obliterate Iranian power plants, starting with the biggest one first, ABC, SMH, Guardian, News.com.au. Iran's Parliament Speaker Mohamed Baghsarian, ABC, SMH, Guardian, News.com.au, and Military Command Khatam al-Anbiya, ABC, SMH, News.com.au, warned that if Iran's power plants are attacked, the Strait of Hormuz will be completely closed and regional energy oil infrastructure will be irreversibly destroyed, ABC, SMH, Guardian, News.com.au. Iran struck southern Israeli cities Dimona and Orod on March 21, injuring dozens, including children, and damaging buildings, marking the first time Iranian missiles penetrated Israel's air defenses near its nuclear research center, SMH, Guardian, News.com.au. Israel's military reported 1,029 deaths and 1 million displaced in Lebanon since March 2, ABC, SMH. Iran targeted the US-British Diego Garcia military base in the Indian Ocean with long-range missiles, range ~400 km, on March 21, per Israeli military chief Eyal Zamir, SMH, Guardian. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian states that British Cabinet Minister Steve Reid said one Diego Garcia missile fell short while another was intercepted, but the SMH reports that Israeli military chief Eyal Zamir said 2 missiles were fired with a range of 4,000 kilometers without specifying interception details. The Guardian implies that Iran's missile strike on Diego Garcia was intercepted, while the SMH reports that Iran fired 2 ballistic missiles at the base without confirming interception status. The Guardian mentions that Steve Reid said he was not aware of any assessment that Iran was targeting Europe, but the SMH reports that Israeli military chief Eyal Zamir stated that Iran's missiles could reach European capitals, Berlin, Paris, and Rome. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, News.com.au, and Sydney Morning Herald. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. ABC staff strike over rejected pay offer and conditions dispute. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. More than 75% of ABC staff, 3,399 out of ~4,500, voted on the enterprise agreement, with 60% voting no to the latest offer, Articles 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The rejected pay offer included a 3.5% rise in Year 1 and 3.25% in Years 2 and 3, plus a one-off $1,000 bonus for ongoing fixed-term staff, Articles 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The strike began at 11 a.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Time on Wednesday, 24 hours long, affecting flagship programs like 7.30 a.m., p.m., Radio National Breakfast, and News Breakfast, Articles 1, 2, 3, 4. Unions MEAA and CPSU represent striking staff, with 75% participation in the ballot, Articles 1, 2, 4, 5. The last ABC strike was in 2006, with emergency broadcasting exemptions in place during that strike, Articles 1, 3. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian states 60% of staff voted no, Article 1, while Newscom Australia reports only 40% voted yes, Article 5, implying 60% no, consistent with others, but Newscom Australia's source, SMH, may have misinterpreted the 40% as yes rather than participation rate. The Guardian mentions a 395-vote shortfall, Article 1, but Article 4 explicitly states 60% of staff who participated voted no, leaving the tally 395 votes short. The Guardian's phrasing could be ambiguous. The Guardian notes the $1,000 bonus excluded casual staff, Article 1, but this detail is not emphasized in ABC's articles 2 to 4. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Death of married at first sight expert Mel Schilling from colon cancer at 54. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Mel Schilling died at age 54 on Tuesday, February 2026, from colon cancer that had metastasized to her brain. Schilling was diagnosed with colon cancer in December 2023, with a 5 cm tumor removed via surgery. In February 2024, a routine scan revealed small nodules in her lungs indicating metastasis. She underwent 16 rounds of chemotherapy over 2 years before announcing her cancer had spread to her brain in December 2025. Schilling joined the Australian version of Married at First Sight in 2016 and the UK version in 2021. But not all outlets told the same story. SMH The Guardian mentioned Schilling's brain tumour was diagnosed in December 2025, but ABC states she was eligible for a clinical trial starting March 2026, implying diagnosis earlier. No sources contradict core facts like her death date, age, or cancer progression timeline. ABC is the only source mentioning Schilling's eligibility for a clinical trial, not referenced elsewhere. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, news.com.au, Sydney Morning Herald and The Age. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Fungal outbreak at Royal Prince Alfred Hospital linked to balcony construction. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Royal Prince Alfred Hospital's transplant unit, Ward 9E, experienced a fungal outbreak in late 2025 linked to aspergillosis mold, killing 2 patients and seriously infecting 4 others. A balcony near construction work was identified as the probable source of the mold exposure, accessible by all 6 infected patients. 6 transplant patients were diagnosed with aspergillosis between November and December 2025, with 1 patient remaining in intensive care 4 months after diagnosis. NSW Health released a final report on the outbreak on Friday, revealing the balcony and nearby construction posed the greatest exposure risk. The hospital's $900 million redevelopment was underway adjacent to the balcony during the outbreak. But not all outlets told the same story. Newscomau states the 4th patient remains in intensive care 4 months after diagnosis, while ABC does not specify the current status of the 4th patient. ABC mentions the 3rd patient died from multi-organ failure due to sepsis associated with a skin condition, but Newscomau does not clarify the cause of death for the 3rd patient. ABC reports the patient in intensive care had a liver transplant and spent 150 days in hospital prior to infection, while Newscomau does not provide this specific detail. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Pauline Hanson's One Nation surge benefiting Labour in Australian elections via electoral system dynamics. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Pauline Hanson's One Nation party secured 20% of the vote in recent elections. Labour's primary vote remained stable at 39% despite right-wing fragmentation. Liberal Party vote collapsed to 19% in the same election cycle. One Nation surged in outer suburbs and regional centres like metropolitan Adelaide. One Nation finished 4th in Adelaide behind Labour, One Nation, and the Greens. This story was covered by Sydney Morning Herald and The Age. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Football Australia schedules Matildas against low-ranked teams ahead of 2027 World Cup. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. The Matildas will play in a FIFA Series 2026 friendly tournament in Nairobi, Kenya, starting April 2024. Australia's next matches are against Malawi, FIFA rank 153, followed by either India, 67, or Kenya, 134. The Matildas lost 1-0 to Japan in the 2024 Asian Cup final on March 24, 2024. Football Australia's Executive Director Heather Garriock stated the team's options were limited in the April window due to other nations qualifying for major tournaments. FIFA announced the Matildas' participation in the Nairobi series on March 26, 2024. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC states Football Australia's focus is on playing top 15 opponents, while The Guardian implies the team's options were limited due to scheduling conflicts rather than a deliberate strategy. The Guardian suggests the April window is a calamity and wasting resources, while ABC frames it as a necessary preparation step despite limited options. ABC mentions Malawi's top strikers, Chawinga sisters, as a worthwhile challenge, but The Guardian does not highlight this aspect of the matchup. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Trial of 2 men accused of rape in Darwin over alleged sexual assault of intoxicated woman. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Panormitis Charalampis and Michael Vroovies were charged with 4 counts each of sexual intercourse without consent in the Northern Territory Supreme Court. The incident occurred on January 14, 2024, after the woman left Mayberry nightclub in Darwin's CBD around 3:30 a.m. and ordered an Uber. The 2 men picked up the woman outside the nightclub, believing she was their Uber driver's passenger, and took her to her apartment. The woman's blood alcohol concentration, BAC, was estimated between 0.1 and 0.15 when she reached her apartment block with the men. CCTV footage showed the woman lying on the ground and needing assistance to walk after being picked up by the men. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 states the woman's BAC was between 0.1 and 0.15 when she reached her apartment block, but Article 3 states the expert witness Jane Goodman-Delahunty determined her BAC was between 0.2 and 0.1, likely a typo in Article 3, but the range is inconsistent. Article 1 reports the woman's BAC was in the high to severe range, 0.1 to 0.15, while Article 3 describes it as severe intoxication without specifying the exact range. Article 1 states the woman passed out in the car and required assistance walking, but Article 2's closing arguments emphasize the woman walked across the road and got into the back seat of the car without assistance, contradicting the need for help. This story was covered by ABC News. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Australia's diplomatic stance on Israel's planned occupation of southern Lebanon amid regional conflict. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Penny Wong spoke with Israeli Foreign Minister Gideon Saar on Tuesday night to oppose Israel's occupation of southern Lebanon, stating Australia does not want to see occupation of southern Lebanon by Israel, all 3 sources. Israel's Defense Minister Israel Katz announced plans to create a security zone between the Israeli border, Blue Line, and the Litani River, up to 30 kilometers north of Israel's border, Guardian and News.com.au. Over 1,000 Lebanese civilians have died since Israel's bombardment began, including over 100 children, News.com.au and ABC. Hezbollah has launched missile and rocket attacks on Israel from Lebanon, with Israel responding with strikes targeting Hezbollah positions, Guardian, News.com.au, ABC. Australia has urged Australians in Lebanon to leave now, with around 15,000 Australians estimated to reside there, Guardian and ABC. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian states Israel's Defense Minister Katz said Israeli forces would control the remaining bridges and the security zone up to the Litani, while News.com.au and ABC only mention the security zone without the bridges detail. News.com.au reports Lebanon's health ministry has recorded 1,000 deaths including 100 children and 40 medics, while The Guardian and ABC mention 1,000 deaths including over 100 children but do not specify the 40 medics figure. The Guardian mentions Australia's mission to Ramallah has been closed for over 7 months, while ABC only states it remains closed without specifying the duration. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Stephen Colbert co-writing a new Lord of the Rings film titled Shadow of the Past. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Stephen Colbert will co-write a new Lord of the Rings film titled The Lord of the Rings, Shadow of the Past. The film will be produced by Peter Jackson, Philippe Arboyans, and Fran Walsh. The film is set 14 years after the events of The Lord of the Rings and follows Sam, Merry, and Pippin retracing their original adventure. Sam's daughter, Eleanor, discovers a long-buried secret explaining why the War of the Ring was nearly lost before it began. Colbert's The Late Show on CBS aired its last episode on May 21, 2024. But not all outlets told the same story. Guardian Article 1 states Colbert's son is screenwriter Peter Colbert, while Guardian Article 3 and ABC refer to him as Peter McGee. Guardian Article 1 claims Jackson's trilogy grossed $5.9 billion combined with the Hobbit films, while ABC initially states $2.9 billion, later corrected to $4.1 billion in The Guardian. Guardian Article 3 suggests Colbert's film may focus on Tom Bombadil, but this is speculative and not confirmed by other sources. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Northern Territory flooding from ex-tropical Cyclone Narelle and its aftermath in March 2026. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Ex-tropical Cyclone Narelle moved through the Northern Territory as a tropical low over the weekend of March 2026, bringing heavy rainfall and flooding. Katherine experienced its worst flooding in nearly 28 years on March 7, 2026, with the Katherine River peaking at 19.2 meters at Katherine Bridge. The Bureau of Meteorology, BOM, issued multiple flood warnings for the Katherine River, including minor flood levels at 16 meters and major flood levels at 17.5 meters. Katherine Hospital was evacuated and closed on March 2026, with a field hospital set up in Katherine East to serve flood-affected residents. The Adelaide River reached major flood levels on March 2026, with 4 homes inundated and a boil water alert issued for Adelaide River and surrounding communities. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 states the Katherine River could exceed the minor flood level of 16 meters this morning, while Article 2 states the river peaked just above the major flood level of 17.5 meters on Thursday morning, 1.6 meters below the March 7 peak. Article 3 says the Katherine River is predicted to peak below the major flood level at Katherine Bridge overnight, while Article 4 says the BOM forecast the river could reach the major flood level of 17.5 meters on Wednesday afternoon. Article 2 states the Katherine River was sitting a few centimeters below the 17.5 meter major flood level after peaking just above it on Thursday morning, but Article 4 states the river was at 15.81 meters on Tuesday afternoon, just below the minor flood level. This story was covered by ABC News. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Tropical Cyclone Narelle's unprecedented path and impacts across Australia. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Ex-tropical Cyclone Narelle formed in the Coral Sea off Queensland on March 12, 2026, and tracked across northern Australia, affecting Queensland, the Northern Territory, and Western Australia. Cyclone Narelle made landfall in Western Australia as a Category 3 system near Shark Bay on March 28, 2026, after intensifying to a Category 4 system offshore. Exmouth, WA, experienced catastrophic damage from Cyclone Narelle, including roofs torn off buildings, power outages, and flooding, with wind gusts reaching up to 250 to 275 km per hour. The Bureau of Meteorology, BOM, forecasted up to 300 millimeters of rainfall at Exmouth's Learmonth Air Base during the cyclone's peak, with sustained winds of around 200 kilometers per hour recorded. Cyclone Narelle caused significant damage to Chevron's Gorgon and Wheatstone LNG facilities, halting production at both sites. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1, ABC, states that Cyclone Narelle was forecast to reach Category 4 by Friday, while Article 10, Guardian, says it was forecast to reach Category 4 on Thursday. Article 1, ABC, mentions that Perth could see up to 50 millimeters of rain, while Article 10, Guardian, states that Perth could see between 50 and 100 millimeters of rain over Friday and Saturday. Article 1, ABC, says Cyclone Narelle was downgraded from a cyclone to a low yesterday, but Article 13, ABC, states it was downgraded to a tropical low on Monday morning. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, news.com.au, and SBS News. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Saudi Arabia's push for US to escalate military campaign against Iran amid regional war. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, MBS, urged Donald Trump not to cut short the US-Israeli war on Iran, calling it a historic opportunity to remake the Middle East, both articles, Guardian. A Saudi intelligence source confirmed MBS's role in urging the US to intensify attacks on Iran, both articles, Guardian. Trump publicly confirmed MBS's warrior status and alignment with US goals, stating "Yeah, he's fighting with us," both articles, Guardian. Saudi Arabia has not yet engaged militarily in the nearly 4-week-old war, both articles, Guardian. Iran launched a drone attack on Saudi Arabia's Yanbu oil refinery on the Red Sea coast, both articles, Guardian. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 does not mention Saudi Arabia's 2023 detente with Iran brokered by China, while Article 2 explicitly states this as context for MBS's current position. Article 1 omits the UAE's explicit call for a conclusive military defeat of Iran, via Ullo Tabor's Wall Street Journal op-ed, which Article 2 includes. Article 1 does not reference Saudi Arabia's cautious neutrality as described by Hesham Al-Ghanem in Article 2. This story was covered by The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Australian states introduce free public transport amid fuel crisis. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Victoria will offer free public transport, metro trains, trams, buses, V-Line, statewide from March 31st to April 30th, 2024, as a temporary cost of living measure. Tasmania will offer free public transport, buses and ferries, statewide from March 30th until July 1st, 2024, due to rising fuel prices. The US-Israel conflict with Iran and subsequent oil supply shocks have caused fuel prices to surge globally, including in Australia, with petrol prices rising by 60% in some cases. Premier Jacinta Allen, Victoria, stated the free transport measure would cost the government around $70 to $79.4 million and save commuter households up to $500 per month. Unleaded petrol prices in Melbourne reached approximately $2.50 to $2.75 per litre in March 2024, up from $1.76 per litre before the conflict. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian and The Age reported Victoria's free transport cost estimate as $70 to $79.4 million, but The Age's $3.2 billion subsidy context suggests a lower foregone revenue figure, $60M, based on fare revenue alone. Newscom Australia and ABC both cited the PBO's $79.4 million cost estimate for Victoria's free transport, but The Age's analysis suggested a lower figure, $60M, based on fare revenue data. The Guardian and ABC, Article 3, reported Tasmania's free transport would last until July 1, 2026, but Newscom Australia and ABC, Article 3, stated it would end on July 1, 2024, likely a typo in Guardian ABC. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, news.com.au, SBS News, and The Age. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Analysis of the Mind Diet's impact on dementia prevention and genetic influences on dietary recommendations. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. The Mind Diet, Mediterranean diet intervention for neurodegenerative delay, emphasizes leafy greens, nuts, berries, olive oil, poultry, fish, and limits red meat, butter, cheese, fried foods, and sweets. A 2024 Lancet Commission report identified 14 modifiable risk factors that could prevent or delay 45% of dementia cases, including high LDL cholesterol, 7%, and untreated vision loss, 2%. The Mind Diet is associated with a 15 to 22% reduction in dementia risk, with the strongest effect among Mediterranean-style diets according to pooled observational studies. People adhering most strongly to the Mind Diet retained up to 20% more grey matter over 12 years, corresponding to a 2.5-year delay in brain aging, observational study. The APOE4 gene variant, present in 25% of people, increases dementia risk and is linked to unprocessed meat consumption benefiting cognitive decline in carriers, though processed meats remain harmful. But not all outlets told the same story. SMH and ABC both report the Mind Diet's benefits, but ABC notes whole grains showed weak results in the Framingham study, while SMH does not mention this contradiction. SMH and ABC both cite the Mind Diet's association with reduced dementia risk, but ABC highlights that observational studies cannot prove cause and effect, while SMH frames it as increasingly strong evidence. SMH states the APOE4 gene variant increases dementia risk by 10x in 2% of people, but ABC does not specify this exact risk percentage. This story was covered by ABC News, Sydney Morning Herald and The Age. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Australia and EU sign long-awaited free trade and security partnership after 8 years of negotiations. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. The Australia-EU Free Trade Agreement was signed on Tuesday after 8 years of negotiations, with leaders Anthony Albanese and Ursula von der Leyen finalising terms at Parliament House in Canberra. The deal is expected to create an annual economic benefit of $10 billion for Australia, lowering trade barriers between Australia and a market of 450 million EU consumers. The agreement includes a 30,000-tonne annual tariff-free quota for Australian beef exports to the EU, a 500% increase from current levels. The EU dropped demands for Australia to scrap its luxury car tax and relaxed restrictions on geographic indicators like Parmesan and Prosecco for Australian producers. A separate Australia-EU security and defence partnership was also announced, focusing on defence industry cooperation, cybersecurity, and counter-terrorism. But not all outlets told the same story. The ABC states the EU's beef quota is 30,000 tonnes annually, while The Guardian and Newsco Australia do not specify the exact quota but imply it is less than the 40,000 to 50,000 tonnes the industry demanded. The ABC reports the NFF president urged Australia to walk away if beef quotas weren't improved, but Newsco Australia does not mention this specific industry reaction. The ABC highlights that some geographic indicators, e.g., Prosecco, Parmesan, will still require phase-outs on exports, while Newsco Australia only states the EU abandoned demands for Australia to stop using them, without specifying exceptions. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Queensland Government appoints former police officer Darren Robinson to Legal Aid Board amid Palm Island controversy. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Darren Robinson, a former Townsville police detective, was appointed to Queensland's Legal Aid Board by Attorney General Deb Frecklington in February 2024 after the LNP government replaced all Labor-appointed members. Robinson was a senior sergeant, then Sen SGT, and friend of Christopher Hurley, the officer acquitted of manslaughter in the 2004 death in custody of Mulrunji Dumaji on Palm Island. Robinson investigated a prior complaint against Hurley in 2004, ruling it fictitious. An inquest later described his investigation as superficial, biased and misleading, and his conclusion as dishonest and flew in the face of objective evidence. Robinson was part of a police team that responded to the 2004 Palm Island riots, including leading tactical police raids into homes after the police station was burned down. The Crime and Misconduct Commission recommended in 2015 that Robinson and 3 other officers be disciplined for their conduct during the Palm Island events, but no disciplinary action was taken. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 states Justice Mortimer's 2015 ruling found Robinson's conduct was harassment and his statements to police were speculative, stereotyped and generalized suspicions, but Article 2 does not reference this specific legal finding. Article 1 quotes Frecklington framing Robinson's appointment as strengthening legal aid's work with vulnerable communities, while Article 2's sources, BOE, Miles, portray it as a divisive or unethical decision. Article 1 includes Robinson's alleged post-riot advice to Jacinta Barry not to seek police help, which Robinson denies, but Article 2 does not mention this claim directly. This story was covered by The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Lachlan Kennedy defeats Gout Gout in 200m race at Maurie Plant Meet, marking back-to-back wins. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Lachlan Kennedy won the 200-metre at the Maurie Plant Meet on the 9th of March, 2025 with a time of 20.38s, beating Gout Gout who ran 20.43s. The race took place at Lakeside Stadium, Albert Park, Melbourne, with around 9,000 to 10,000 spectators in attendance. Kennedy also won the 100-metre earlier in the evening with a time of 10.03s, setting a meet record. Gout Gout was the national record holder in the 200m and reached the 200m semi-finals at the 2024 World Athletics Championships in Tokyo. Gout Gout is 18 years old and Kennedy is 22 years old. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian states Gout Gout finished his 200m season opener in 20.42s with a strong headwind, but this time is not mentioned in other sources. The Guardian mentions Gout Gout broke his Australian record with 20.02 in Ostrava, but this specific record-breaking time is not referenced in other sources. The Guardian says Gout Gout plans to run a few Diamond League meets in Europe, while other sources do not mention this detail. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, Sydney Morning Herald and The Age. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Meta ordered to pay $375 million in New Mexico child exploitation case. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. A New Mexico jury found Meta liable for violating New Mexico's consumer protection law in a case alleging misleading users about safety on Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp while enabling child sexual exploitation. The jury ordered Meta to pay $375 million, $538 million including penalties, in civil penalties, the maximum allowed under New Mexico's Unfair Practices Act, $5,000 per violation. New Mexico Attorney General Raul Torres accused Meta of knowingly allowing predators to exploit children and failing to implement basic safety tools like age verification. Meta plans to appeal the verdict and stated it works to keep users safe despite challenges in identifying harmful content. The trial lasted 6 weeks, with jury deliberation taking less than a day. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC reports Meta shares rose 0.8% after the verdict, while The Guardian does not mention stock performance. The Guardian highlights Meta's encryption of Facebook Messenger in 2023 blocking law enforcement, but ABC does not mention this specific detail. The Guardian emphasizes Meta's AI-generated junk reports overwhelming law enforcement, a point not mentioned in ABC. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. NSW government considering banning strata manager commissions to cut apartment costs. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. NSW Productivity Commission report recommends banning commissions to strata managers, citing conflicts of interest and inflated costs. Commissions can account for 15 to 25% of some strata management firms' total revenue, in some cases representing their entire profit margin. A $50,000 insurance policy can generate a $10,000 commission, 20%, split between brokers and strata managers, increasing premiums for residents. Over 550 submissions were received during consultation on the report, with reform proposals receiving strong backing from apartment owners. The NSW government estimates scrapping commissions could create $333 million in benefits to apartment owners over 15 years through lower premiums and competitive pricing. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian emphasizes urgency with Actistrat calling for bans sooner rather than later, while the SMH and ABC frame the government's response as cautious and deliberative. The Guardian reports Actistrat's warning about Sydney becoming the city with no grandchildren due to population decline, which is not mentioned in the SMH or ABC. The ABC states that commissions amount to hidden payments that owners don't know about, while the SMH focuses more on the legal and contractual complexities of changing providers. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, and Sydney Morning Herald. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Mohamed Salah's departure from Liverpool FC after 8 seasons. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Mohamed Salah scored 254 goals for Liverpool across 380-plus appearances, 255 goals mentioned in Article 2, 254 in Article 1. Salah won 2 Premier League titles with Liverpool, 2019-20 and 2021-22. He scored 19 goals in the 2019-20 Premier League season and 29 goals in 2021-22. Salah was part of Liverpool's 2019 UEFA Champions League winning team, scoring the decisive penalty in the final. Salah's last game for Liverpool was a home match against Galatasaray, mentioned in both articles. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 calls Salah's 2020 Anfield goal against Manchester United his personal favourite and the moment that ended the 30-year wait, while Article 2 suggests his greatest goal was the solo run against Manchester City in 2021. Article 1 describes Salah's departure as sadness felt over it happening now, with the team in such a mess, while Article 2 frames it as a difficult end that will soon be forgotten as he joins Liverpool's legends. Article 1 argues Salah's last of his elite greatness was consumed by the 2022 league title effort, implying a decline post-2022, whereas Article 2 does not explicitly tie his decline to the 2022 title but to systemic changes under Slot. This story was covered by The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. US Senate and House funding standoff over DHS, excluding ICE and Border Patrol funding. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. The US Senate passed a funding package for DHS on March 29, 2026, excluding ICE and part of CBP, Customs and Border Protection, by a voice vote in an overnight session. The Senate deal funded TSA, US Coast Guard, and FEMA but not ICE or Border Patrol, with the House needing to act before agencies reopen. TSA staff have worked without pay since mid-February 2026 due to the funding lapse, leading to high absenteeism and airport delays. Donald Trump ordered DHS to pay TSA agents immediately via executive action on March 29, 2026, citing an emergency situation. The House rejected the Senate's bipartisan deal on March 29, 2026, passing its own full DHS funding bill, 213-203, that included ICE and Border Patrol. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 states Trump threatened to put ICE agents in airports until Democrats agreed to a DHS budget bill, but Article 2 does not mention this specific threat. Article 1 reports Trump said he would take executive action to pay 50,000 airport security workers before the deal was reached, while Article 2 does not mention this number or timing. Article 2 claims the Senate deal would have left ICE and Border Patrol operations unaffected due to 2025 extra funding, but Article 1 does not explicitly state this as a reason for the standoff. This story was covered by The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. UK nurse Lucy Letby's 2015-16 neonatal unit murder convictions and allegations of miscarriage of justice. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Lucy Letby was convicted in 2022 of murdering 7 babies and attempting to murder 7 more while working at the Countess of Chester Hospital's neonatal unit between 2015 and 2016. She was sentenced to 15 whole-life prison orders, and the Court of Appeal refused her permission to appeal in 2023. Letby's lawyer Mark MacDonald submitted an application to the Criminal Cases Review Commission, CCRC, in 2024, supported by reports from 27 medical experts, requesting a re-examination of her case. The CCRC is currently reviewing the application for a potential retrial. Former police detective Stuart Clifton, who led the Beverley Elite investigation, and Steve Watts, author of National Police Guidelines on Healthcare Deaths, initially believed Letby was guilty but later concluded the case was a miscarriage of justice. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 states David Davis called Letby's case a miscarriage of justice and criticised Cheshire Police's investigation, while Article 2 quotes Cheshire Police dismissing Davis's claims as misinformation and baseless. Article 1 reports Davis arguing Cheshire Police failed to follow official guidelines and best practice, but Article 2 omits this specific criticism and instead frames Davis's comments as part of a broader core group spreading misinformation. Article 1 includes Davis's direct quote about the investigation being initiated by a single meeting with consultants who had themselves been involved in seriously inadequate care, while Article 2 does not reference this specific detail. This story was covered by The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Teenage assault on paramedic after stolen car crash in Melbourne. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. A stolen Mazda 3 was involved in a crash with a Volkswagen Jetta at Nicholson St and Victoria Parade, Carlton, just before 6 a.m. on Saturday. 4 teenage males were traveling in the stolen Mazda 3 when it collided with the Volkswagen. 2 boys fled the scene immediately after the crash. A 19-year-old man and a 15-year-old boy were injured in the crash and taken to hospital by ambulance. A 66-year-old man and a 76-year-old woman from Terang were in the Volkswagen and taken to hospital as a precaution. But not all outlets told the same story. News Kamau states the 19-year-old man assaulted the paramedic, while ABC states the 15-year-old boy did. News Kamau does not specify the severity of injuries for the 19-year-old, while ABC describes him as seriously injured. News Kamau does not mention the 15-year-old receiving minor injuries, which ABC specifies. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Government bailout secures Queensland aluminium smelter's future with renewable energy transition. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Rio Tinto's Boyne Island aluminium smelter in central Queensland is Australia's largest aluminium smelter. The federal and Queensland state governments have committed $1 billion each to a $2 billion bailout package for the smelter. The deal aims to keep the Boyne smelter operational until at least 2040 while transitioning to renewable energy. The partnership will create or secure 3,000 jobs, 1,000 direct and 2,000 indirect, in Gladstone and central Queensland. Rio Tinto CEO Jerome Pecres and regional operations head Armando Torres praised the deal as a landmark partnership for decarbonisation and economic resilience. But not all outlets told the same story. No contradictions found between the two sources. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis.